My name is Frank Francom. I want to start with a confession. I went to Berkeley Law School. Yeah. And I somehow still managed to be speaking at the Western Conservative Summit. Um, One of the things I want to start with, though, is everybody in this room owes a big thank you to the organizers here of this conference. Please raise your hand. Yeah. Jeff Hunt at the Centennial Institute does magnificent work making this happen every year. And Colorado Christian University does magnificent work making this happen. So if you see Jeff, if you see anybody from CCU or the Centennial Institute, tell them thank you and let's give them a round of applause. Now Ashley said earlier that the government always wins. And I'm actually here to talk about a situation where that's not quite true yet. And what it is a combination of lawyers who take cases on contingency fees. You can call them the plaintiff's bar, you can call it the class action bar. That combination with attorneys general and district attorneys all over the country who are pushing a new form of public nuisance law that is very radical and will basically take a lot of policy making out of the hands of Congress, out of the hands of presidents, and putting it in the hands of local juries. A couple of example cases I'm going to be talking about. One is Boulder, Colorado. Everybody here know about Boulder, Colorado? Okay, if you don't, you wrap Berkeley and Madison, Wisconsin up into a bundle and you put it at the base of the Rocky Mountains. That's Berkeley, or that's Boulder, Colorado. Bless their hearts, they're so earnestly progressive. It's bless their hearts. Boulder, Colorado, a couple of years ago brought a lawsuit against Exxon. And the theory of the lawsuit is not that Exxon did anything illegal. They took fossil fuels out of the ground, they refined them, and they sold them. All that is legal. But Berkeley's theory is that by doing that, they caused some amount of global warming. And global warming is causing damage to Berkeley. And in fact, it's causing millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars of damage to Berkeley. Not Berkeley, Boulder, my error. It's a B town. Millions of dollars of damage. And so this case for millions of dollars for ExxonMobil causing global warming is going to be tried now in Berkeley before 12 citizens chosen off the Berkeley voter rolls. Now, do you think, Boulder, I keep saying Berkeley, my error. Do you think that it's possible for ExxonMobil to get a fair trial in Boulder, Colorado about global warming? Okay, no, it's going to be the Salem witch trials. Now, understand that this is only possible because the district attorney and the city of Boulder decided to make the lawsuit, and they found a law firm that would take the case on a contingency. Because this is expensive stuff. I mean, lawyers cost $400 to $600 an hour if they're any good at all. And if you're going to bring a lawsuit like this, you have millions of dollars going out. So it's the combination of district attorneys, attorneys general, and contingency fee private lawyers that are creating a multi-billion-dollar industry. And the lawsuits are all kind of like this global warming lawsuit in Boulder. Now, I want to talk for a minute about contingency fees. There's nothing wrong with contingency fees. There's a strong public policy in the David and Goliath situation. If I had to sue, say, Microsoft, that would not be a fair contest because Microsoft has lots and lots of money, and I don't have $1 million to sue Microsoft. So I find a lawyer who takes the case on a contingency. Now, I have another example case. Washington State has brought a case against Johnson & Johnson, the big healthcare provider, and Johnson over opioid manufacturing. Now, Washington State has a gross domestic product of about $700 billion a year. Their general fund is about $40 billion a year. Is Washington State David? No. Washington State is Goliath, and Washington State is suing another Goliath, and it's Goliath versus Goliath. There is no good public policy reason to allow contingency fees in a case where the plaintiff is the state of Washington. And the guy running the case is the Attorney General of the state, who's an incredibly powerful man. He puts people in jail. Okay? He puts people in jail for a living. He has a budget of millions of dollars. This is not a David and Goliath situation. One of the reasons contingency cases are so pernicious in this sort of situation is actually there's three really strong reasons. One is, okay, I've practiced law for many years. I can tell you that in my profession, if you tell a group of lawyers that you can make hundreds of millions of dollars by pursuing this type of litigation type X, there will become an industry that does litigation type X. And in fact, those lawyers will be going around, in this case, to attorneys general and district attorneys all over the country and signing them up for contingency fee cases. And the nice thing about signing up the state of Washington is you can do enormous damages because it's a state, right? And so, I mean, Washington has collected hundreds of millions of dollars in this litigation against other defendants. And the lawyers are going to collect enormous amounts of money because they get a percentage of that. So the first thing is, this is bad because it's going to create an industry that is going to take policy making over things like global warming out of the hands of Congress and putting it into the hands of local juries. The second reason is it makes attorneys general make bad decisions. Okay, if something is free, you spend it really, really easily, don't you? Okay, now when the Attorney General of Washington hires a firm that takes a contingency fee, that's basically free to him. It doesn't come out of his budget. He doesn't pay it out of his pocket. All he has to do is take the benefits. And if you Google this particular case, the Attorney General of Washington has been putting out press release after press release after press release about what a great guy he is and what about great results he's gotten. And it's free. He has no skin in the game. And when people don't have skin in the game, they make bad decisions. And okay, I don't know the Attorney General of Washington, and I don't know what's in his heart, but I know that attorneys general frequently want to become governor. And so when a politician has a free way to get enormous amounts of publicity and have somebody else pay for it, that's what's going to happen. So what happens is bad decisions start getting made. And there are 3,300 lawsuits about the opioid situation being brought by states, counties, cities, other government jurisdictions, mostly with contingency fees right today. Global warming, there's dozens, okay? This is going to be an area of law that becomes endemic. It is going to get bigger and bigger because lawyers are going to make a lot of money out of it, and the plaintiff's bar is really good at exploiting situations where they can make tons and tons of money. I mean, lawyers are making tens of millions of dollars on single cases in this particular area, and that, okay, I mean, that's a lot of money, and people are going to fill that gap. So I guess the final thing is more a philosophical problem, and that is, you know, I don't particularly like a lot of the stuff that Congress is doing right now, or that the administration is doing, or that our administrative agencies like the Federal Trade Commission are doing. But the process we have in the United States is drawn up by the Constitution, and those decisions are made about global warming, for example, by Congress and the President, by administrative agencies. And there's no place for the 12 people in the city of Boulder to be making policy about global warming. And there's no place for 12 people in the state of Washington to be making policy about the opioid crisis. I mean, you may not like the fact that Johnson & Johnson made painkillers, okay? That's your call. But what they have done is one of the most heavily regulated industries in America, and everything's legal. So why do 12 people in Washington state get to say, well, yeah, that's fine, but we're going to make it illegal because it's going to be so expensive, you can't do it. And in fact, as I understand it, I think Johnson and Johnson is out of the painkiller business because of this litigation. I'm not positive about that, so double check me on that. The policy issue is really, where do we make these decisions? And a little bit about where this is going to go. Okay. After the Bruin decision by the Supreme Court about the Second Amendment, there's going to be a lot of local laws that are overturned because they're flat out unconstitutional, and they always have been. Imagine if a district attorney comes up with a theory, and I'm sure this is going to happen. Actually, what will happen is a contingency fee lawyer will go to a district attorney and say, hey, you could make a lot of money by suing Remington, because Remington makes guns, and well, actually they don't anymore, but they make ammunition and Winchester and all these companies, they make firearms. And the theory is just as good as global warming. They make a firearm, and somehow the firearm ends up in Denver, Colorado, say, and then a bad guy uses the firearm to shoot somebody, and now Denver says we have damages as a result of that person having been shot, and therefore Remington, Winchester, Springfield Armory, you owe the city of Denver millions and millions of dollars. They're going to put the firearms business out of business, even if it's our constitutional right to bear arms, because it becomes so expensive. This theory of public nuisance law or trade misrepresentation law has to be taken back to its original common law roots. Okay, I did a public nuisance lawsuit. Okay, a very wealthy guy up in Beverly Hills had a dog. His neighbor thought the dog was too loud, and he got the district attorney to bring a nuisance lawsuit to abate the nuisance. And what that meant was basically taking the dog away and making the dog be quiet. That's traditional public nuisance law, or that's an example of traditional public nuisance law. Global warming is not, the opioid crisis is not. So from a standpoint of expanding the law that way, that has to stop. Okay? Your job, when your local politicians decide that they want to go grab a lot of money with a lawsuit of the state or the city or the county against a business, and they want to pay lawyers on a contingency fee, start making a stink about it. Politicians respond to stinks. Okay, and that's letters to the editor, call up talk radio shows, get this issue out, because if we don't, okay. So the second thing is, when somebody asks you about contingency fees are a good thing. Understand? I've taken cases on contingencies, so don't get me wrong about that. But contingency fees, when the plaintiff is the state of Washington or the county of Boulder or the city of Boulder or the city of Berkeley or the state of California, are completely inappropriate. And if we let those continue, that will end up eating up our Constitution with litigation that the progressives have decided that this all pushes things in a progressive direction. And the way you do that is, as a citizen, you have a state bar. And the state bar sets ethics rules for lawyers. And there's there's a lot of reasons why contingency fees cause ethical problems for lawyers. If I have $1 million resting on the outcome of a case, it makes it much harder for me to make good decisions. And then it does if I'm taking fees on an hourly basis. So there's good reasons not to have contingency fees. And the ethics committees of state bars control whether contingency fees are appropriate and in what situations. Call your local state bar and start talking about this issue. Contingency fees for lawyers who represent governments are inappropriate and are causing terrible problems, and will cause much more terrible problems in the United States.